Hey everyone, so today we're going to be looking at a retarded video by Democratic Socialist 01. This guy has been on my radar for quite some time now, mainly because of just how delusional he is. How delusional is he exactly? Well, he plays the no true Scotsman.
Yes, and ANCAP is calling me delusional when his oxymoronic ideology has never been tried because it is simply childish nonsense.
He plays the no true Scotsman so frivolously that he actually made a video claiming that Bernie Sanders is not a true democratic socialist.
Sanders promoted higher taxes and a stronger welfare state. He was running on a Scandinavian social democratic platform, not a democratic socialist one. He certainly did not advocate for the collective ownership of the means of production. Of course, this ANCAP is most likely far too stupid to understand the difference between democratic socialism and social democracy. So let's move on.
That's exactly one frame into the video, and we're already demonstrated with definitive proof that this person has absolutely no idea what they're talking about. Capitalism is not a hierarchical power structure where one person, group, or class controls everything.
Oh, yes, it is. Capitalism is an economic system based on the private ownership of the means of production. Is this buffoon arguing that a wealthy factory owner is on the same social and economic level as one of his workers? What a moron. Typical ANCAP.
Capitalism is not a hierarchical power structure where one person, group, or class controls everything. Capitalism is simply the voluntary exchange between private companies or parties.
This ANCAP even denies the definition of capitalism. Capitalism has always been about the private ownership of the means of production. The owners tend to be in the upper part of the hierarchy, whilst the working class, who have to sell their labour power to the capitalist in order to survive, are at the bottom of the hierarchy. Well, it is an ideology solely reserved for internet-dwelling know-nothings.
That's hilarious. I'm apparently an internet know-nothing, but you're the guy whose entire argument is based on the incorrect definition of what you're talking about.
You just claimed that capitalism does not promote a hierarchical power structure, which makes you a reality-denying dunce. And deluded university professors.
Really? Because last time I checked, academia was on your side.
My point was that anarcho-capitalism has only been advocated by a few delusional university professors. It has never been put into practice because it is a stupid system that cannot work.
That's why so many college kids supported Bernie Sanders.
Who really should not be teaching. Why do I think anarcho-capitalism is a deluded fantasy and a joke? It is because capitalism requires the state to protect private property. No state, no private property.
That's not even remotely true.
Actually, it has always been true. That is why no anarcho-capitalist society has ever existed.
On top of the fact that public services would still exist in an ANCAP society but would merely be privatized.
Once services are privatized, they are no longer public services.
You can defend your property, you can hire private security, which would be dirt cheap considering that in an ANCAP society.
No, you would not be able to hire these armed groups for very little money. They will in fact be your new rulers. Say if you lived in your absurd society and hired 20 mercenaries to protect your property. What stops them from killing you and seizing your property? Absolutely nothing.
Companies would literally fight each other to the death in order to provide the best quality of service for the lowest cost due to competition.
This guy is a complete moron. If the firms are literally fighting each other to the death, then one will come out on top and will be able to charge whatever they like because they have violently removed their other competitors. It should also be noted that there is nothing stopping this private security firm from seizing control of the rest of the country.
Legalized theft would be abolished, aka taxes. You would have to be cartoonishly incompetent to not be able to afford these basic services.
Once again, your society would result in massive monopolies that would eliminate its competition through violence. You admitted that yourself. There is nothing to stop the gigantic corporation from using its power to eliminate tiny rivals that are just starting up.
But even with this aside, what exactly makes your private property yours now? I'm not talking about your house or your car if you own one. Obviously, that's through a deed to your house or your landlord or through bank statements or whatever. But I mean little things like silverware.
This dunce does not even know the difference between private and personal property.
You don't have any legal documents that can prove that you're yours. So hypothetically, let's say that you invite a friend over for dinner and they decide to steal your fork that they ate with. You could call the police, but you have no legal proof that the silverware is yours. So why do people recognize private property in such small forms like this if the concept of ownership and the non-aggression principle doesn't come naturally to us?
People steal silverware all the time and are charged for it. So much for your non-aggression principle. I know that ANCAPs are mostly internet know-nothings.
This coming from the guy who says that society can't function without a state.
I said capitalism cannot function without a state, which is completely true, which is why we are yet to see an example of an anarcho-capitalist society.
And uses capitalism and feudalism synonymously.
My argument is that your make-believe system of anarcho-capitalism would simply be a return to feudalism, where a few selected private owners would be the masters, whilst the rest of the population would be treated like serfs.
The only requirement for trade of property is that it's voluntarily traded rather than through fraud or aggression in an ANCAP society. If a property dispute were to occur, it would be settled in a private court system.
Yes, private courts, where those who pay the biggest bribes win. Although that would be a waste of money, because these private courts would not even have the power to enforce their rulings.
And for the record, we already have those. They're called arbitration services.
Arbitration only works when the two parties can agree to a solution. If they can't agree, they usually take their matter to a higher court. The title holder will almost always win over those who are not registered.
Stop being so vague and misleading. The title owner is obviously going to win because in this case, the property is registered in their name.
Registered with who? Certainly not the state-run titles office that would not exist in your society. So they register their land with the government. ANCAPs, on the other hand, think property law is really simple. They don't take any of these disputes over property into consideration. They just say that we will have a system of property rights and no government.
Oh, for the love of God. Really, dude? You're pulling the libertarianism doesn't stand for anything, or they don't care about the issues card again. You know, I would have a long and detailed explanation of why that argument is complete crap, but considering how easily I refuted your last point that you're claiming that I don't think about at all, I'm going to let that speak for itself.
In your last point, you talked about property registration, but failed to mention where people would actually register their property in an ANCAP society. The fact that you proclaim yourself the winner after such a poor argument just demonstrates what a joke anarcho-capitalists are.
So really, your thrashing, your absolute 100% refutation boils down to the system we have now has many complications and complexities. Therefore, there could only be one system. There is no alternative. And we are supposed to be the so-called internet know-nothings?
My argument is that capitalism cannot exist without the state. And so far, history has shown that I am 100% correct. Can any idiot ANCAP explain how disputes over property would be resolved in an ANCAP society?
Private courts, or as they're referred to now, arbitration services.
You can't, can you?
Strange how you make it sound as if you've never heard anything close to a counter to your ridiculously easy point to counter.
Your solution is to have private courts that can't even enforce their own rulings. That is utterly moronic. You will find that most capitalists prefer corporatism and favor government intervention, especially when it comes to protecting their assets.
Citation fucking needed. And no, don't give me some cherry-picked bullshit case from some fucking weird Eastern European country that is a completely isolated incident. No, I want a study that links corporatism and favorability to big government with libertarian capitalists and laissez-faire advocates.
Notice how he changed the word capitalist to laissez-faire advocate in order to dishonestly muddy the waters? The truth is that capitalists have always shown more support for corporatism and dictatorial government than they have for anarchy, which they have always feared. This was the case in Italy 1922, Germany 1933, Spain 1935, and Chile 1973. The links will be in the description.
You see, this is why knowing what you're talking about is important, because the only system that forces workers to be kept in line is the system that you advocate for. See, in a capitalist economy, the business owner voluntarily hires workers who will then provide a service to the business owner voluntarily in exchange for money. The product that is then created by the workers will be traded by the business owner to the consumers who will voluntarily purchase the product offered by the business owner.
You actually have to work to survive in this day and age, so it is hardly voluntary. Knowing this, the capitalists pay the worker as little as possible in order to get a larger profit. Notice how I actually use evidence to back up my claims? You should try it once in a while. Because of state intervention. That is a fact.
If I just call something a fact, then I don't have to provide any proof for my arguments. Kind of like the Young Turks. No. Learn how to debate, then come back to me. Thank you.
That has been your main argument. Instead of using evidence to refute my claims, you just scream wrong, no, incorrect. You are a joke.
The owners, the so-called owners, only run the factory. In a fascist government, the government owns everything and establishes control over all aspects of life. Therefore, by definition, a fascist society has no private property.
So the ANCAP utopia would likely end up being a dictatorship of those who own the means of production over the majority who don't.
No, it wouldn't.
Whilst I'm not an anarchist, I do acknowledge that there are real anarchists who have even put their ideas into practice. For example, there are many documentaries about anarchist Catalonia.
So according to him, the only real anarchists are anarcho-communists or anarcho-syndicalists, which is fucking hilarious. I will put in the description how anarcho-communism or anarcho-syndicalism is a contradiction. But, yeah, he lists examples of how these societies have functioned before, and the example he provided, anarchist Catalonia, only lasted for like a year. That's socialism in practice for you.
Meanwhile, your type of society is yet to last 5 seconds. You're so moronically stupid.
And no, it didn't break down because of the absence of a state. It broke down because socialism and communism are...
I thought communism and anarchism broke down in Spain because they lost the civil war to Franco's fascists, who were not only backed by Spanish capitalists, but also by the Third Reich and fascist Italy. Funny how the capitalists sided with the fascists once again. Very odd how that always happens.